my siblings for more than one reason. Please reach out your hands in prayers over me. Most High, we ask that I may speak with your voice and that we may hear. Alleluia, 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 alleluia. If anyone loves me, they will keep my word, and my parents will love them, and we shall come to them. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia. May Christ be with you.
And also with you.
A reading from the Good News according to Mark.
Glory to you, O Christ.
Then Jesus went home, and again such a crowd gathered that he and his disciples were unable to even eat a meal. When Jesus' relatives heard of this, they went out to take charge of him, thinking he had lost his mind. But the religious scholars who had come down from Jerusalem said of Jesus, he is possessed by Beelzebul, and he casts out demons through the ruler of demons. Summoning them, Jesus spoke in parables. How can Satan drive out Satan? If a realm is torn by civil strife, it cannot
I think it's just you and me.
What's up, Rachel? It is just you
Hi.
and me. Hi. How's yoga? How's everything?
Yoga is done. Yoga is done. I finished my training last Sunday, and I just have to teach a full yoga class, and then I will be certified. So yeah, so I'm all done. So I was rushing to get the. Oh, here it comes. Coming back.
Oh yeah. Okay. Cool. Yay! I'm happy.
Yeah.
Yes.
How much of the gospel did you actually hear before I realized?
Like the first two sentences.
Right then. So shall I take it from the top? Good glory. All right. So Jesus went home, and again such a crowd gathered that he and the disciples were unable to even eat a meal. And when Jesus' relatives heard of this, they went out to take charge of him, thinking he'd lost his mind. The religious scholars who come down from Jerusalem said of Jesus, he's possessed by Beelzebul. He casts out demons through the ruler of demons. Summoning them, Jesus spoke in parables. How can Satan cast out Satan? If a realm is torn by civil strife, it cannot last. If a household is divided according to loyalties, it will not survive. Similarly, if Satan had suffered mutiny in the ranks and is torn by dissension, the devil is finished and cannot endure. No attacker can enter a stronghold unless the defender is first put under restraint. Only then can the attacker plunder the stronghold. And the truth is, every sin and all the blasphemy that people utter will be forgiven. But those who blaspheme against the Holy Spirit will never have forgiveness. They are guilty of an eternal sin. Trust me, I'll get to that. Jesus spoke all this because they said he's possessed by an unclean spirit. Jesus' mother and brothers arrived and sent in a message asking for him. A crowd was sitting around Jesus, and they said to him, your mother and brothers are outside looking for you. And Jesus replied, who is my mother? Who is my family? And looking at everyone there, Jesus said, this is my family. Anyone who does the will of God, that person is my sister, my brother, my mother. This is the gospel of our Christ.
Praise to you, O Christ.
So you remember how much I talk about the consensus fidelium, the sense of the faithful being the voice of the Spirit? That literally the clergy are supposed to sit down and shut up when y'all say, no, no, you're wrong. Because if you get the unified voice, it's because the Spirit's speaking through you. So if you harm and reject that voice of the Spirit within you, you're blocking the Spirit within you, you're blocked from the Spirit. And when we think about God being outside time, that's a timeless blocking until you again timelessly unblock. There is nothing that can permanently separate us except our permanent continued choice to separate us. And frankly, it's unity that all these readings are talking about today. When we look at Genesis, how did it feel to hear the actual literal meaning of the names? Adam is not the dude Adam. Adam literally means the earthling, the person of dirt. It's not even gendered. And Eve, Chavah, is living. And so we got that story about living, talking to earthling and wanting more. I can identify. My living usually talks to me and wants more. Often that's a very good thing, right? And in this case, it's knowledge. But there was this little deceit play going on. So we also find that there's the danger of what knowledge is good and when is too much knowledge or too early happening. And I personally think that that's why we end up with the curse of the serpent, because too much knowledge too early without the steps in between can cause problems. Very warm priest has been pushing it too far this weekend, so apologize for the drinking. So what does it mean then that earthling and living come together to form a family? Dirt being in life itself. What does it mean when that family, that team makes a choice that causes a separation? Oh, I don't know, maybe deconstruction. Little knowledge caused a big headache, and eventually you find a place you can live, but it's really raw there for a while, right? What does it mean that the serpent was the persuader? And apparently at the time was a lizard because we lose our legs. What's that metaphor all about? Serpents later get attached to knowledge and intervention things, but that's after we have the bronze serpent on the stick in the desert. Right now, this is literally just the word for snake. And what does it mean when you have this nascent team, this first team, that immediately is split by the desire to avoid responsibility? Earthling blames living and God, trying to set aside closeness in an attempt to shield themselves from responsibility. What does that say about human nature? And then we go to the psalm, and it's crying out for faith, for relationship, not for retribution. That's who the psalmist knows God to be. Out of the depths I cry to you, O God. I trust in you, O God. My soul waits for you, O God. And 2 Corinthians, we don't lose heart because our hearts know that we're not alone. So let me kind of pull out bits. We too believe and therefore speak, knowing that the one who raised Jesus to life will in turn raise us with Jesus and place you with us in God's presence. You see, all this is for your benefit, so that the grace that is reaching more and more people may cause thanksgiving to overflow to the glory of God. That is why we do not lose hope. Corinthians talks about a faith that is seen in Scripture, and we do, and talks about a faith that comes into our physical lives. And then it also, by the way, talks about death, when our physical self fails, frankly, ages and becomes less able. I am paying for 5 hours of weed whacking on Friday. Just saying. I could have done that no problem 2 decades ago. Our physical self is failing day by day, but these troubles are actually, in the big picture, light and momentary, and that even includes cancers and things, and we know whereof we speak. It is a transitory thing, and even there, God bears fruit. You're going to spend decades learning the lessons from cancer. It's profound. It definitely changed me, and it made me a better and kinder person. Not exactly how I wish I'd learned that, but it's true. So we don't lose heart in these things, at least completely. I lose heart regularly, but not completely, because our hearts aren't alone. Grace has reached us. Grace places us in God's presence. And my thanksgiving overflows. And I'm hoping you've experienced this feeling. I hope that you experience these words with a memory of this having happened. And if you haven't, I'm pretty sure you will at some point. And then we have that gospel acclamation that hopefully you heard, that if anyone loves me, they keep my word. Who's the word? And my parent will love them, because that's the rule, and we shall come to them. And then Mark comes in. And Jesus goes home, and there's such a huge crowd that they can't even sit down and get a bite to eat. And in a familiar story to many of us, everyone's got their take on what's happening and what they need to do for you without asking you. Gosh, that sounds familiar in my life. Sometimes I even do it. And so when his relatives hear of this, they go to take charge of him, thinking he'd lost his mind. And the religious scholars, and why is it always scholars? And why is it scholars from the center of authority that need to go put their biz in Jesus's home? What? And they say he's possessed by Beelzebul. He casts out demons through the ruler of demons. And Jesus hits done now. He summons them to have a word. And his response is, how can Satan cast out Satan? Now remember your logic. How can 6 become 0 without something changing? There has to be a subtraction. There has to be a change. How can this become not this without something changing? Satan can't cast out Satan. And then he points out, and remember, this is in an occupied country. If a realm is torn by civil strife, it cannot last. We're looking at Israel and Judea. We're looking at conquered territory and Herodian proxy rule territory. We're seeing this. Honestly, we see it now on the world stage, and we fear it on our own. If a realm is torn by civil strife, it cannot last. If a household is divided according to loyalties, it will not survive. I'm betting we all know the truth of this one, too. We've seen it happen. So if Satan had suffered mutiny in the ranks and is torn by dissension, the devil is finished and cannot endure. So Jesus takes things that they absolutely viscerally know and says it is completely unreasonable that a successful strategy of the enemy would be the self-destruction of the enemy's work. That can't be what's going on here. It doesn't make sense for Satan to go around deliberately harming his brand. And remember, this time they had all kinds of different theories about how to deal with the concept of Satan. We'd gone from the prosecutor to this kind of personification of darkness that they'd inherited from Babylon. They got exposed to the idea of a bad god, and they've been kind of wrestling it since. The last metaphor is kind of interesting. No attacker can enter a stronghold unless the defender's tied up. Only then can the attacker plunder the place. Ironically, here, it's the attackers who are in unity with the unified plan, right? The defender is either literally alone or figuratively alone, because whoever's in the house did not successfully act together in order to get the apparently lone defender tied up. So it's interesting that here it's the attackers who are the demonstration of unity. But this whole discussion is about a lot more than the accusation that Jesus is doing dark deeds with his miracles. He's got a huge crowd. He's in Galilee, which is a really, really cosmopolitan area, but we think that's where he was living at this time too. And he is talking about division and unity, and what has life and hope and heart and what doesn't. And then the gospel goes on to say that Jesus said all this because they said he's possessed by an unclean spirit. And then Jesus' mother and brothers arrive at the house and try to get in to see him. And the crowd's, your family's here. And Jesus says, what's family? What's really family? These are all family. It's not excluding mother and brothers. He's saying that if you are walking together in this, you are walking in family. And family is what God's been after from the beginning. Walking in the dawn of the garden with the people God created. That's what God wanted. That's what God always desires. God just desires our willing companionship. Even when we're telling him he's a rat, which, happens. I really think that one of the most honest God prayers is, God, what the? And God would rather hear that from us, because that's how you talk to somebody who's real to you. And God desperately wants to be real to us. This is what God and God's prophets have said over and over again. In fact, when you think about the Israelites, they're not all just the linear descendants of Abraham. They're the band of refugees that went with them out of Israel. Over and over, what we hear is, you are my people if you keep my commandments. You are my people if you try to do things together in a unified way, unified with me. And we know that the two commandments we have are to love God and give it everything, and to love each other and ourselves. And those two hang every other law we've ever tried to make. So I want to hear what this family hears in these teachings. I want our voices to come together in community. Let's talk.